Christian Watson, wide receiver, North Dakota State. 6'4", 208 pounds. Another prospect to be a little bit older coming in the draft, to be 23 years, 3 months, coming off a year where he had 43 receptions, 801 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Combine, destroyed it. Absolutely destroyed it. Made a name for himself. Ran a 4.36 40 at 6'4", 208 pounds. That's terrific. 38.5-inch vertical, 136-inch broad jump, was the best amongst all wide receivers. He's versatile. 49 carries in college, 27 kick return attempts. Some of the things I like about Christian Watson, his combine numbers, elite for his size. His dad, he comes from a good pedigree. His dad played in the NFL, played cornerback for 5 years. His size, speed, salivating. Quick feet, gets off the line pretty well. Can play inside and outside. He was used in sweeps a lot. Got a decent amount of handoffs.
Yep.
Really stretches the field with the consistent deep catches. Right, that's where they used him. He's a linear receiver. And what I liked about that though is he got a ton of separation in his go route. So we see a lot of these linear receivers, like a guy like Alec Pierce. Christian Watson got much more separation in his go routes than a guy like Alec Pierce. Alec Pierce has better hands.
Different level of competition, so you do have to kind of factor that in as well. But he is more fluid, for sure.
Way more fluid in the hips.
And cons, played versus lower competition. Route tree, limited. Could definitely use some NFL coaching to get a little bit more refined. Some drops that I didn't like. Like some balls that really went through his hands that I didn't really love. Could add some more pounds to his frames. Again, a bigger receiver that needs frames, singular. A bigger receiver that needs to kind of decelerate to get in and out of his breaks. But a high upside dynasty prospect that probably needs a year to develop an NFL game. Likely a first-round rookie pick, but a guy that he blew up the combine so much. I was so excited to watch. After watching his tape, I'm like, okay, I feel really good about Christian Watson at 2-1. Like really good about him. And I went on to the Rookie Fever podcast with Mike Fanar, and I'm like, I'd probably rather take a guy like Christian Watson over Chris Olave. And now I'm like, I'd probably just rather have Chris Olave. You know what I mean? Like he's safer.
Yep.
But again, he's an intriguing prospect with a high upside player. But there's a lot about his games that's pretty limited at the same time.
Right. No, I agree. He's raw coming in, but he does have all the tools. And like you mentioned, really great size. Very hard to get that kind of size-speed combination with the 4.36 in the 40 at 6'4". You mentioned Demaryius Thomas as a guy like Treylon Burks. It's ironic because I put that in the notes for Christian Watson, and I think it speaks a little bit closer to Christian Watson's skill set. I think he can do some things close to the line of scrimmage. You could throw him a screen pass and he can make some people miss, but he can also beat you downfield. And he's a big kind of physically imposing guy that I don't want to say it, but I'll say it, is just like in better shape. And Demaryius Thomas, that dude was ripped, man. I mean, he, you know what I mean? And he was a big dude. He was thick and physically imposing. So I guess I saw Demaryius Thomas a little bit when I watched Christian Watson. And I think if he develops, obviously he's got a long way to go because he's a small school guy, but he could end up being that type of guy in the NFL. So I do see a tremendous amount of upside for a prospect like Christian Watson, but he's going to need to develop. He's a guy that, he's in my third tier of wide receivers, with the Calvin Austins. But I would rather take him. I would rather take him than Calvin Austin. I haven't got Pickens in there yet, but Pickens will probably slot in there somewhere as well.
I think Pickens ends up being a first round rookie pick when it's all said and done.
There's a very high possibility. He's a fantastic player. But on Christian Watson, I really liked the tape that I saw. Yes, there are some concerns with the lower level of competition, him being a little raw, but the thing that I think is incredibly special about Christian Watson is when you have the athletic profile that he has at 6'4", running the speed that he has, he should not be able to move laterally as well as he does. He moves really well laterally. He can make guys miss. When you watch his routes, like he can do some things, and I think it was the Senior Bowl that really highlighted. And Jared, you can correct me if I'm wrong. You were there, but the Senior Bowl is where it really went from this guy's a good athlete to this guy's a good receiver. This guy can actually win with route running. He can actually win with, how he does things at the line of scrimmage, his release, the second level, at the junction points of his routes. Like, he can actually win with those things. And to me, like, I have Burks higher, but not by much. Burks has a 76.25. Christian Watson has a 76 flat.
I forgot to mention Burks is in the same tier. It's Christian Watson or Calvin
Austin.
It's Calvin Austin. It's Christian Watson, and it's Treylon Burks in that tier right now. It's going to get more crowded, obviously, but he's in the same tier.
Yeah. So I walked
Burks
away.
The same tier as Calvin Austin.
Yes.
God bless your soul.
Treylon Burks is the same tier as what? Who? Calvin Austin?
Calvin Austin and Christian Watson.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So I have Calvin Austin a tier below those guys, going from a 73 to a 76.
Sure.
So he's in a lower tier, but I have Watson and Burks neck and neck. Burks is higher, but I have the two of them neck and neck, and he's a player too that, yes, there needs to be some refinement, but if he goes to a quarterback with a live arm, like, it could be wild.
Mm-hmm.
It could
I
be
think he
absolutely
goes
wild.
first round based on his
I wouldn't be
athletic
surprised.
profile and his size and speed and everything. I think he's a first round wide receiver. Someone's going to take a shot. One of those teams is going to come up and be like,
His upside's through the roof.
Yeah.
Like, he's got wide receiver one
Absolutely.
upside. Like,
Absolutely.
But you're taking a risk on a small school guy.
You are.
That's a little bit more limited.
My only worry with him is, like, is he one of these athletic freaks that has trouble catching the football? Because there are some drop issues that I see in his film that I'm making a little hesitant.
I had his hands.
There's a game that he had where he, like, in the end zone, went right through his hands by the fall play, like, over, like, it just right through it. Again,
Yeah.
a good receiver just catch it over the shoulder, and he, like, just missed it.
Yeah. I agree, but I also saw him make some one-handed catches. I saw him make some fantastic, like, falling backwards catches. So
I think they're concentration issues. That's what I put on here for his hands as well.
yeah, I don't think there's, like, issues with actually catching the ball. I think it's focus, it's the timing, it's that kind of stuff, which I think will come.
Yeah, I don't
agree.
think his hands were like a red flag for me. There's some drops there, but I don't think it was a.
I gave him a
concern.
6.5 because can do some spectacular things, but misses some
Some easy
easy
ones.
sometimes.
For 6'4", I think he can do some Debo Samuel things in your
He could.
offense. I mean, the way this dude turns the corner at his size and speed with his hips,
wild.
I mean,
And
he's extremely fluid.
And do you remember Demaryius Thomas? They used to just chuck him out little screen passes. He'd make people miss in the open field and get downfield. And that's where I kind of drew the comp with Demaryius Thomas and him, because I do think he can make people miss in the open field. I think he can get around the edges and stuff like that and on sweeps. I think he's a very interesting guy.
So I'm wrong, not 2-1.
He's one of those guys. He's like one of those guys I want to try really hard to leave my rookie draft with. Like 201, I think is perfect spot, Rich.
Well, that's
If you're able to get him there,
that's
then
why I feel
awesome.
really
Yep.
good about it. And same thing, like we talk about a guy like Jahan Dotson, who's a really solid, good hands receiver. Like Christian Watson offers so much more upside,
He has a higher ceiling, a much lower floor,
much lower
but
floor.
a higher
Much,
ceiling.
yep.
And to be fair, when you talk about a guy like Christian Watson, his ceiling is the number one fantasy receiver in this
Yes,
whole class.
absolutely.
That's his ceiling.
Absolutely.
He's got the size and speed in today's NFL to really produce these 6 catches, 150 yards, 2 touchdown games. Like, that's the kind of player he is. Like, he can do it. And he can take the top off of defense and he can get that separation. Again, like, the whole time you watch him, like, oh, I wish he was on Alabama so we could see. I wish he was on LSU so we could see.
And that's
him
why
versus
I
these other players.
value what he did at the Senior Bowl so highly, because it leveled the playing field.
And dude, when first day, I'm like, who's this big dude burning everybody? I had to like look at the roster. I was like, oh, that's the kid from North Dakota State, Christian Watson. I was like,
And he did have a really good Senior Bowl.
he
had a
did.
great
I mean, he
Senior
was
Bowl.
voted the top wide receiver on his team by his teammates.
Yeah, so it's
So when it levels the playing field like that, that always piques my interest a little bit for small school guys. We saw that a couple years ago with, I'm trying to remember, there was another small school guy, Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp was
We
a
loved
smaller
him.
school guy,
Yeah.
but he looked amazing at the Senior Bowl when
amazing
everything
at the Senior
was, when the playing field was level, he still stood out. And so
It's an important first step for those small school guys when
It
they
is.
get on that big stage.
And if you go back and listen to our shows on Cooper Kupp, we're like, wow, man, just watching him at the Senior Bowl, like, this guy is a borderline now. Like, nobody else is talking about him, but like, he's a borderline first-round pick. We had him like graded like right around 2-1 in our rookie draft. Same kind of like here, like, at 2-1, Cooper Kupp, we're calling him Moscow Mule at the time, was like, but we talked Cooper Kupp up pretty high, and this is another player that could fall in the same category.
why did you call him that?
Copper Cups. Moscow Mule.
Got it.
So,
got it.
So same, like I'm gonna throw this scenario out consistently because it's a dream scenario for so many players. What if Christian Watson ends up in the first round to the Chiefs?
That's a freaking home run.
So no, I know it's a home run, but how high does he move up your board? Does he go up to 1.5? Would you take him as your second receiver off
I would
the
say
board?
he definitely isn't going above Garrett Wilson still for me.
And I agree, but like as high as like 1.5 there with the Chiefs?
Yes.
Yes. I like Jameson Williams quite a bit. He graded. I'm a week ahead on him, and he graded pretty well for me still. It would be close between those two guys. And then I still need to grade Drake, so it's tough until I've graded Drake to like really be able to say confidently one way or another. But I mean, I could see a scenario where he ends up being wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. I think that's a possibility.